It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest have undertaken an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Planet Podcast, your weekly podcast for all things movies, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly and I'm your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Matt Freeman. Matt, how are you today?
I'm fantastic, Scott, and I'm looking forward to talking about you know what? I don't even really know what this is. Is it a studio?
It is. We're talking about LAIKA, the stop-motion animation studio. And to help us talk about LAIKA, we have our multiple-time guest, Adrian, back. Adrian, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me again.
Of course. Matt, LAIKA is a stop-motion animation studio that has done films like Coraline, ParaNorman, and but the Box Trolls. And the reason we're talking about them is because they have a movie coming out on Friday called I just blanked on the name of the
Kubo and the Two Strings.
Kubo. I was like, and it was KU something.
Yeah.
Kubo and the Two Strings.
The reason for my befuddlement was I was suddenly not sure if LAIKA was a studio or a style of making movies, but you've clarified it's all the same studio.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kubo and the Two Strings is coming out on Friday, and I want to bring any attention possible to this film because I know it's probably going to be great, and no one's probably going to go see it. Because that's kind of the way these movies work. I think they're always financially successful. They make money, but they're never as big as I feel they should be. Because I love every single one of these movies. Adrian, what's your history with these films?
I've been following them basically since they first came out. One of the first movies they actually worked on was through contract work they did, Corpse Bride with Tim Burton years back, and that's where it seemed like they were getting their feet wet, and because of the capital that they got from that is how they kind of moved forward with their own venture. And I've watched each of their movies since, and they just keep on getting better and better. And I will be one of the people who definitely goes to see Kubo. And one of the cool things about the studio that I like is while they're not as huge monetarily as lots of the other studios that are out there, they always get really big critical acclaim, and that seems to help them be able to get their next film and get the funding or whatever finances they need for their next venture.
Absolutely. So we will dive into those movies in that studio in a little more detail in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk about some news with you guys. Some interesting stuff happened this week. Some of it kind of funny, some of it kind of ridiculous. The first thing I want to talk about is Man of Steel, because WB has said that they are working on a Man of Steel sequel officially. But how is this possible? Because Superman died at the end of Batman v Superman. So, Adrian, what's your opinion on this? I'm guessing I know you didn't like Batman vs Superman. I'm guessing you weren't a big fan of Man of Steel either.
I'm one of the people who I enjoy the beginning 20 minutes or so on Krypton, just because it was so different and so out there, but also just huge and epic, and it was fun in a way that the rest of the movie completely does away with, which just feels it's very Zack Snyder is the only way that I can describe it. But of course there's going to be a Man of Steel 2 that's going to be announced, because the only decision that DC can make is if we continually making these movies, occasionally one of them has to be good.
That's true. I think it's this whole thing. I mean, both Justice League and this movie makes it seem like killing Superman at the end of Batman vs Superman was stupid, because everybody knew in that moment that he wasn't going to stay dead, and now we're just not even trying to hide it by making announcements that we're making a Man of Steel 2. So yeah, I don't know. I think Devin Faraci on Birth Movies Death wrote a great article about DC tending to over course correct with their Superman characters in these movies. So I am a little worried that they're gonna try to ramp up the classic Superman that everyone's been asking them to do and go way overboard with it and make a truly ridiculous movie that doesn't even feel like it belongs with the others. We'll see. I don't know.
I'd almost rather see that than just more of the same.
Yeah. After last weekend, my faith in Warner Brothers and DC is waning. Yeah, we'll see though. I mean it's very early development. Like, I don't think there's a director attached. I don't think there's a script. I don't think there's anything. But we will see. Superman is not going to be dead. Surprise, surprise.
So is this movie going to come out before or after Justice League?
After.
So is Superman going to come back in Justice League? And then okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
So
all the Justice League promotional images have Superman front and center in them, so they're not even like pretending like that's not going to happen, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. That's so great.
Anyway,
Man of Steel 2 can decide to go just, I guess, maybe really into the weirdness of DC Comics and say, you know what's a good idea? We should totally do the Return of Superman, because that's a comic that everyone loved.
I bet they will.
I think they should just do a Mix the Spitlick movie, because we haven't had that yet.
Oh my god! I at this point I won't put anything past them. They're gonna do whatever they think is the smart move, and they're probably gonna be wrong. But we'll see. Still holding out for Wonder Woman. Still have hope, but we will see.
Yeah.
The next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, because I think it's hilarious, is The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, sent on Instagram this morning, actually, saying that about Furious 8 was almost wrapped, but he specifically called some of his male co-stars on the movie candy asses. I want to talk about this because I want to speculate which one he was talking about, because I have no idea. Adrian, who do you think he was talking about?
Well, I read something later that somebody said that they had inside knowledge of who it was.
Did they say?
Oh, somebody said that they had a friend who was working on it and they were trying to get intel, and they said supposedly it was Vin Diesel himself.
No way. I thought they were buddies. This is disappointing. I thought for sure it was Tyrese or Ludacris. I was convinced.
It's heartbreaking.
Not
Well,
Lucas Black?
Maybe.
Oh, jeez. I don't even remember who's in all these films anymore.
It's funny. The first thing I assumed was like The Rock trying to offer Vin Diesel some like massive syringes full of human growth hormone, and Vin Diesel being like, "No thanks, man. No thanks, man."
And then he said,
Because,
you're being a real big candy ass right now.
yeah, that's right. And Vin Diesel was like, "No, I'm plenty big." And then The Rock was like, "But I'm like 6 times bigger than you." And then Vin Diesel was like, "No."
I would just see that movie. I mean, if that was just a movie on its own, I'd pay to see that.
Yeah.
So the only issue that I had was you gave Vin Diesel way too many words to string together there.
It's true. I was trying to simulate the conversation as accurately as possible, but clearly I didn't do too well.
You left out some grunts, groans, and just a nah.
Yeah. Nah.
Well, I mean, maybe this signals the end of the Fast and Furious franchise, and Vin Diesel can then focus on the real love, the Triple X franchise, which is coming back.
Well, actually, I hope he gets back to the Riddick movies and just never stops making those.
I liked the most recent Riddick movie. I thought that was great.
I liked all the Riddick movies. I love Riddick. I love Vin Diesel. I love it when he does creative things.
You mean when Vin Diesel wills any project into being, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he makes his D&D movies, basically.
I never saw that movie, and I really wanted to. What was it? Something Witch?
The
Last Witch Hunter?
Yeah.
I never saw it either, but I
movie.
actually expect it to be pretty fun.
It's got to be.
It's not. It's not.
Really?
Oh.
Oh.
The first 5 minutes feel like it's going to be fun because it takes place basically in like medieval times. Vin Diesel has this crazy Viking type look, and there's weird special effects and fighting inside a tree, and there's a witch, and then it jumps to modern day, and everything feels like a D to Z grade version of the Constantine movie with Keanu Reeves, basically.
Okay, but But is it better than The Happening?
Parts.
Oh, wow.
Parts.
I expected that to be an easy answer.
The problem with Vin Diesel in all of his movies that I wish he could overcome, because it would really improve like him in general as an actor, is that he always has to come off as a badass. And that's not really what people want to see in like their hero. They want the hero to sort of be barely hanging on by the skin of his teeth. But Vin Diesel's characters are always like so awesome that they can just kick everybody's ass all the time without even trying. And it's just not very dramatic.
Yeah.
I've thought about this a lot.
Did you ever see that short film that he made, where he plays a character like going to different auditions, and like he's like, because he's like ethnically ambiguous, he like has to play a black guy or a Latino guy, and like it's a great little short film. If you guys haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's on the internet somewhere, and it really shows like how actually talented of an actor he is.
Yeah, no, I've heard about that. I've never seen it. You reminded me now. I really want to find that.
I will find the link, and we will put it in the show notes.
Great.
All right, the last news item I had for you guys is Jimmy Smits is going to have a cameo in Rogue One. This news broke earlier this week, and it's supposed to be a surprise cameo that's revealed 4 months before the film comes out. So this means, Matt, that we're officially tying back to the prequels, since he's playing the same character, I guess, that he played in the prequels.
I'm sorry, I can't respond to you right now. My heart is broken.
The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I don't understand why they're doing this. Like, it's generally accepted that the prequels are bad and nobody likes them. So why intentionally draw a line back to it? I just don't get it.
It's fan service, I think.
But there's no fans. Like, who
stop
are you
servicing us?
Like, does it?
Leia's adoptive father, Bail Organa. I mean, Bail Organa was always a character, but not played by Jimmy Smits. So I guess it's only fan service in the sense that they're like, well, we can use the same actor, and so it won't be so jarring.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because they feel like they're maybe beholden to something. I mean, we understand as people on the other side of the curtain that the prequels aren't held in such reverence, but the people at the studio level don't always tap into that and think, hey, we used this guy before. Wouldn't it be really fun? Wouldn't it get people really excited if we went back and we got Jimmy Smits again? But of course, in relation to this movie, we're talking about a movie that in the course of 2 different trailers, you have Forrest Whitaker, who has like 4 different hairstyles, even though he's wearing the same outfit.
Yeah.
Has Jimmy Smits news ever been exciting? Like, was it exciting when he was, like, they made a big deal when he was cast in episode 3, and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then he was barely in the film, and he had an awful line reading, just like every other actor in that film did. But
yeah,
I don't know,
more robotic.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I don't get, like, it's probably just gonna be a cameo. It's probably gonna be like 5 seconds on film, so it really doesn't matter. But then if it doesn't matter, why do it? So I don't know. This is just me hating on the prequels, but I will always do that. Always.
Yeah, that's fine. That's why we're here.
To remind people how terrible the prequels are. And to talk about how great stop motion animation is. Did you see that transition?
Yeah, that was really smooth. Yeah.
Like that? So yeah, we've talked about stop motion on here a few times before, just kind of in passing, because when we did our Wes Anderson podcast, we talked about Fantastic Mr. Fox, and we talked about it a little bit last week, because I think it was Daniel that brought up LAIKA, actually, and he actually gave me this idea. So I am fascinated by the technique, just in the fact that it seems on the surface level to be the most pain in the ass way of making art in the history of art. I guess, do you think people out there know what stop motion animation is and how it works? We can do a quick primer. So basically,
I wouldn't mind I wouldn't even mind a primer, because like I feel like I might not know all. I'm sure I don't know all the techniques they use. I just know the little snips that I've seen of like, videos of them posing the characters. But there's some things that you'll see in these movies where you're like, I have no idea how they did that. So
Yeah, and I mean, the cool thing about Leica is how they're blending very traditional stop motion techniques with modern stop motion techniques. ParaNorman was, I think, the first stop motion movie to use color 3D printers to make their models. So yeah, it's basically, film runs at 24 frames per second. So they take pictures of models and then move them slightly, and then take another picture and then move it slightly. And when you run that back at 24 frames per second, it makes the models look like they're moving. And they do this for hours and weeks and months. I think when I was going through the Coraline special features, they said an animator will get about 6 seconds or 6 or 7 seconds of screen time a week in this. So it is it is a terribly painstaking process. It takes forever just to set up, and then you have to think of all the different things you need to move. It's gotten a little bit easier with 3D printing and the fact that they've made like interchangeable faces on these things now. So instead of having to have the animators mold and sculpt the face to get each new facial expression, they can just swap off. They've divided the face in eyes and mouth area, so they can just swap off the pieces and put them on. But even with that, it is still a process that takes forever. And a movie like Coraline, which was like we said, their first like self-funded feature-length stop-motion film. Everything in that movie is stop motion. They used no CG. They used I think they used, for some of the fires and some of the fireplaces, they used actual just traditional drawing animation. There's scenes where fog is in it, and that's just recording of dried ice that they just overlaid on top of the stop motion scenes that they shot. So everything you see in that movie is stop motion, from the plants, the grass, like everything. And it's incredible. Like I can't imagine why you would want to do that. But the end result is just unique. Like it looks like nothing else, and when it's done well, like Leica really does it, it's just a joy to watch.
Yeah, I honestly assumed that certain parts of those films were CG, like certain parts of Coraline specifically, where something like really ethereal is on the screen. Like I would just always assume like, oh well, clearly that's just CGI photoshopped in there. But you're telling me it's not. That's even more amazing.
I mean, so like Box Trolls, they do have CGI elements in it, and I think even ParaNorman does have some CG elements in it.
ParaNorman has quite a bit throughout it, but it's to just to add to the effects that they already have.
Right. All the central characters are puppets that are hand moved by animators, and it's just like I love animation, period, because like if you're making a movie, like a live action movie, you're kind of held back by your environment and what where exactly you're able to put the camera and how you're able to do things in the space that you've built. Like animation gives you complete control, and stop motion animation like kind of limits that, but still gives you a fair amount of control. And how they pick and choose what shots and what to do and how to do these things is fascinating to me. Box Trolls in particular, I think I was watching some of the special features, and they said when they saw the script for this movie, they were like, "Oh, this will be easier because a lot of the characters are just in boxes, so that'll make it a lot easier for us to animate." And it turns out it was literally the exact opposite. That and having to animate the boxes and making them seem like they move up and down, like they're resting on the character's shoulders, and then like having to have the characters go inside the boxes, they had to like have different versions of the head that cut off at certain spots so you could show it slowly going inside the box. Like the amount of detail and craft that's required for these films is just above and beyond like any other type of filmmaking. And they have to make everything is the other thing. Like they can't use anything because everything is scaled down differently. So like all the clothing is handmade, and it's handmade to look like the seams are the size of the characters, not the size of our seams. And it's just insane.
Yeah. And to sort of follow on your previous comment about this being the most pain in the ass thing imaginable, like I really genuinely can't think of a more pain in the ass way of making like a film, because with with a movie with actors, you can always go back and reshoot things, and at worst you're going to have to kind of set things up the way they were before. With hand drawn animation, if there's something you don't like, at worst you can redo it, which will take time but not months. And at the easiest, you could potentially just go in and change a few frames that you don't like. With CGI, you can do whatever you want. But with this, like, let's say you don't like the way something was, it's like, well, the models are all completely moved somewhere else now, and we've taken that apart, and that's being used over here. So in order to, like, I guess I'm trying to say, like, I can't imagine that you would ever do reshoots or corrections of any kind. You'd just be like, yep, it's done. That's it. That's what it is. I hope we did it perfectly. And I guess if you have so much time, you pretty much just do it perfectly. But that's kind of incredible.
Yeah, the cool thing about it is it's different than normal animation in that all the dialogue is recorded before they've even really started animating the characters, because they basically have to do that because they have to know exactly where the mouth is going to be
right.
in each frame in order to record the character talking. So, like that's very interesting, and it does, like, if you if you've recorded all your dialogue and then you're animating and realize that you don't like a certain thing, or you don't like, we're going to take this scene out or tweak it a little bit, all your dialogue's done. Your actors have gone home, so you don't really have that freedom. So you have to just kind of make it work. And I like it's to me, it's incredible that these movies are as well shot and well crafted, and then also, like, the thing that Laika does so well is craft these really fascinating stories.
Yeah.
Coraline is based off of I think it was a short story. It wasn't like a kid's book per se. I mean, it kind of was, but it was like a chapter book. And they took this charming little story and they turned it into this thing that's like a certain level of creepiness and weirdness and aroma and atmosphere. And they told this wonderful story that I just absolutely love. Like, I was entranced by it. And I had said in the past, I'd said when I was talking to you guys that I liked ParaNorman more than Coraline. After having just watched the three of these, I really think Coraline's my favorite of the three. I was surprised by how much I just loved this movie.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a Neil Gaiman story, and he's great. But the Corpse Bride. So I have to confess, I've only seen Coraline and Corpse Bride of the movies from the studio. But Corpse Bride is also really great story and really different movie too. I actually watched it again fairly recently, and I was surprised. I didn't remember it being as good as it actually is. But yeah, it's great, and like you said, it's very, like, unique, and they take a lot of risks in the types of projects they pick and the types of stories they tell. Like, I mean, Corpse Bride is such a weird idea. It's,
right.
Very kind of Tim Burton, except almost weirder than typical Tim Burton, because there's a lot of rotting bodies.
Yeah, and Coraline kind of skirts that line too, because it's almost like too scary for its target audience.
Yeah.
But like not something that would directly appeal to adults. So it's like it's definitely skirting this line. And I think, Matt, you've talked about how you're not afraid to show your kids stuff. And like when we were kids, our parents were never afraid. Like that's something, like, if your parents are brave enough to sit you down and watch this movie that might freak you out a little bit, I think there's something to be enjoyed there. But you're right, it was, making that film was a risk for them. Especially with how much money is invested in this stuff because of just the time and effort it takes to do it. I think that Coraline in particular, the thing I picked up this time more than ever was just how well the film, like, shows a difference between the environments. Like, firstly, between what things look like in the real world versus the other world, and then even the changes in the other world when it looks nice and happy, where it goes to the other world where everything's falling apart and she's being attacked. And it's like really small stuff because it's using the same thing, like it's using the same setting and the same type of things, like the I think it was the grasshopper lawnmower that looked like this really cool machine in the one scene, and then is this terrifying death machine in the other. And it just captures that change in emotion and tone really, really well. And I really, really enjoyed that this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that I really like about the studio in general, and watching all these movies, it's awesome. It was great seeing and feeling again, is that they very much have their area in the animated film market cut out for them. Not only do they do they have these kind of weirder stories that are more fantastical in their way, not only are they doing the stop motion, but at the same time they focus on more human elements to the stories. And you look at any of the other studios that are out there, like Blue Sky or DreamWorks or Disney and Pixar, the majority of those have their talking animals or talking characters. And even though Disney animation often has humans be a central part of it, they still have, the rabbits and cuddly animals that they're talking to. And in these films, the Leica films, they're focusing on the humans elements to it. They might have some little characters that they talk to, but that's not it's not in that cuddly package. And so they have that corner for them to kind of set them apart, because watching these, I was thinking of the marketplace that they had kind of this summer with having Finding Nemo and having The Secret Life of Pets. And any of the summer movies that you've had come out so far that have been animated have kind of just directly attacked the other one by saying, hey, you've got cute animals, we've got cute animals here. That's our big thrust.
Yeah, and then Leica standing here with the ancient Japanese legend that they're turning into this interesting story. So
I love. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just gonna completely agree. And I mean, Coraline is a movie just about this little girl dealing with the fact that her parents aren't paying attention to her, and it's this fascinating metaphor for like looking at how you look at something and how you perceive things, and how that can change how you react to a certain situation. Like the real world at first is painted very drab and dreary and awful, and then just really it's the same place at the end of the movie, but she's just kind of reached a place of understanding and acceptance, and is enjoying her life. And I think like ParaNorman, and I know you haven't seen this movie, Matt, but ParaNorman has the first openly gay character in an animated movie. And it comes up at the end. It's just like a character that, like this really buff jock that one of the female characters in the movie has been like pining after all movie, and she finally just asks him out at the end of the movie, or asks like to go see a movie or something, and he says, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend will really like this." And it's like ParaNorman's like a movie about acceptance and accepting the differences in people. Like he is a kid that can see dead people, and he's ostracized in town for it, and everyone calls him a freak because they don't believe him. And it harkens back to Salem witch trials with being afraid of people that they thought were different, and throwing that moment in, which is a really small moment at the end of the movie, is like a perfect way to latch onto that theme of we just accept people for who they are, because it's played as a joke that the reveal that he's gay, but it's not a joke on him. It's like a joke on her. Like it just treats it as matter of fact, and it's fine with it. But he's not the butt of the joke, and I think that's just a perfect. It's a perfect way to do it. It's a perfect movie to drop that into, and it's kind of crazy to me. I didn't even realize that this was a movie that finally broke that ceiling of openly gay character in an animated film.
Interesting.
Well, yeah. and with both ParaNorman and then Box Trolls, the way that they go about focusing on their villains is great, because they're not really villains. They're just misunderstood people who either have done something wrong that they thought was right in the past, or they're wanting to be accepted by another group of people, so they're causing more problems to get accepted into this group. And it speaks to just really human elements that's awesome. And both movies have scenes where you see the truth behind the villains, that they're not really terrible people. It's just that they made bad decisions that they felt were right at the time.
Yeah, the Box Trolls villain, and I had never seen this movie. As much as I glow about stop motion animation, I just missed this one. So I only saw it today. And the villain of Box Trolls might be one of the most complicated villains in a kids movie ever. This is a guy who cross-dresses as a woman, who his entire motivation is just so he could be part of a crowd of aristocrats in the town, so he can be there in the room when they try expensive, delicious cheeses. He's allergic to cheese.
Yes.
So
he's lactose intolerant.
Yeah. So it's not even that he wants to eat cheese. It's just he wants to be in the accepted, esteemed group of people in the town. And his entire motivation and his entire reason for wanting to hunt down and kill all these, as it turns out, innocent and harmless box trolls, is just for that level of esteem. And it's like there's so many levels to this guy, and the cross-dressing part, like it's treated like, again, he's not, that part of him is not really the butt of the joke. Is that just like that he's just a guy that also likes to dress up as a female singer on occasions, and like he's a fascinating character. Like I bet there are people that were pissed off about this, because I know there were people that were pissed off about the character in ParaNorman being gay, because they said it was Hollywood's gay agenda and trying to hypnotize our children and all this bullshit. But I'm sure, and I haven't read about this, but I'm sure there were people that were upset by this character.
Never heard of this, but I really want to see this movie now.
It's Netflix, man.
It's
Check it out.
Beautiful.
It's
like just like the level of animation that they're doing with the stop motion is crazy, because everything just seems so fluid. They have so many set pieces. The town that everything takes place on is the best way to kind of describe it is, and now I'm gonna blank on it, but is the it's the city in Lord of the Rings is the best way to describe it, because everything's everything's built and kind of a vertical slope. Everything's spiraling up in this town. So you've got a chase sequence that's literally just going around all the curves. There's no straight lines. It's just going around these curves in the town, and it's just everything's so fluid that you'd think that it's CGI that's masking itself as stop motion, but it actually is stop motion, because at the very end of the movie, basically the majority of the credit sequence, they have two of the henchmen in the movie who are played by Nick Frost and Richard. I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but Ayoade, I believe, or Ayoade.
The guy from IT Crowd,
yeah. And they're very existential henchmen, and it has them talking basically about their life, and you see ghosts of the animators slowly moving the characters and all the pieces around them, just to show all the craft that goes into making just this one simple little scene.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's like the cool thing about watching these back to back in rapid succession was definitely seeing how much better the studio has gotten at this craft as they've gone. And that's not to say that the animation in Coraline isn't wonderful. It is. But they are continually challenging themselves and stepping up the game in ways that I didn't even think possible. I mean, like, ParaNorman has a huge crowd of people at one point, which is, I mean, it's got to be a super pain in the ass to animate. And then Box Trolls does the same thing. Like, there's crowded city streets with multiple people moving around. There's a whole giant dance number in the middle of this film that they did use CG on it, because to animate every single person, to make every single character in the ballroom dance at the same time would have been just insane. They did make 4 of them, and they had our 4 main characters all do every single movement, and then they animated, or they CG'd the rest around them. But they look at a problem and they say, we can do this. Like, that one of the featurettes I watched for Box Trolls was like, as a producer, you get a script that says there's going to be a giant ballroom scene, and you just say, we're not going to do this. but this studio says that, and they look at that, and then they say, okay, let's figure out how to get it done. and that's awesome. It's like they are advancing the craft in incredible ways, and everything I've heard of Kubo is a natural progression to that. The animation in that is even better than Box Trolls, so I really can't wait.
It looks great, and to bring up Box Trolls again, the smallest little scene that I can think of that just shows how great and how much time they have to spend on it is one of the first time that you find out that Snatcher is allergic to cheese. His face is slowly puffing up in different ways, but you can tell that there you know in the back of your mind that stop motion they're having to do it, but just how it shows up is just fantastic, and it looks like it's just effortless. But at the same time, you know that took them probably like 4 or 5 days just to get the few seconds of his face slowly swelling up.
Yeah, they said, for most other characters and most other scenes, they can reuse some of the face swaps for different emotions. They couldn't reuse any of them, so they printed all these various faces just for this one scene where his face is puffing up. And they said because his face was so large and was so complicated, like they could print like 100 faces an hour normally. For him, it was 12 an hour. So this one part of the movie took an immeasurable amount of time. But it does. It looks great. And the thing that I love about stop motion animation is if they're doing their job, the viewer doesn't even notice unless they're really sitting down and thinking about exactly how it must have worked out to get all this done. But when it's on screen and being projected for you, it just looks so effortless and smooth and beautiful. And there's so much work that goes on in that behind the scenes. So before we conclude this segment of us talking glowingly about this studio, is there any other stop motion films that you guys particularly want to call attention to? Because I have one.
I mean, even though it's not completely stop motion, I just to give a shout out to it. You guys mentioned that you were connecting Fantastic Mr. Fox to everything else with the stop motion. But of course, if you also go a little bit further back into Wes Anderson's filmography, you've got The Life Aquatic, and all the Life Aquatic stop motion scenes were directed by Henry Selznick, who did Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas and did Coraline.
Yeah, I had forgotten that he directed this. That's a good point. Yeah, that was really cool to stop motion too. Matt, do you have anything?
Not off the top of my head. I'm actually looking at a list of stop motion films, and it's funny, for something that I have such positive affect toward, I don't really have any prime examples in mind other than like all the stuff that we would watch as kids, like Gumby and like when you were a kid, anything that had like dinosaurs. If they wanted to have like dinosaurs fighting or whatever, it would always be stop motion because either it would be a cartoon or it would be stop motion because there was no CGI, obviously. Right. So yeah. I remember, it was literally not until Jurassic Park that like you saw real looking dinosaurs on a screen of any kind. So
I wanted to talk about last year's, I guess, Anomalisa, which is a stop motion film that was probably one of my favorite films of last year, although I didn't see it till this year. But Matt, you need to see that movie.
It's a good movie.
Anomalisa is cool because in most stop motion, they have the two interconnecting pieces for the eyes and the bottom half of the face, and then they kind of, in post, I think they kind of hide the line that shows where those two pieces connect. Anomalisa doesn't, and it's because the film is kind of very meta in its stop motion nature. Like there's literally a scene where one of the characters loses a piece of his face. So like it's acknowledging that the fact that these characters are all just puppets, and I think it's intentional. It's part of the film. It works it into the story of the film, and it's so good. And the animation's really good, but the film is so good. I think one of the taglines was like the most human film of the year, which is meant to be ironic, but I think it's really true. Like this is like LAIKA as a studio, this movie is very human. It's also very adult. It's not for kids. But it's so good. Charlie Kaufman, man, I love
so
him
good.
so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say in any given year when Charlie Kaufman comes out with a film, that film is gonna be the most human movie of the year.
Yeah, that's true.
So I did think of a couple films, two of which are kids films that completely slipped my mind. But since we talked about Celtic already, James and the Giant Peach was another big.
I forgot that was stop motion.
Yeah, completely stop motion. I remember being blown away by it when I first saw it in theaters. And then the Wallace and Gromit films.
Oh
Gromit.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But then for the adult crowd, even though it's part live action, but then has stop motion throughout of it, and is a rather trippy film, is Alice by Jan Svanemajer, who is he's a Czechoslovakian director who does very heady, weird, over the top, crazy films, but they're all critically acclaimed, basically. And Alice is one that if you're able to find it for rent, to give a try, because it is an adaptation. It's a darker adaptation of the Alice in Wonderland story.
Cool. I love dark adaptations of that story. There have been several. There's a video game.
There is.
I just remembered Nightmare Before Christmas. I can't believe I forgot that.
I can't believe we didn't talk about that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Like, that's another one where for whatever reason, it seems like people who make stop motion films tend to pick really interesting stories. Or I don't know. I guess maybe it's just unconventional stories go along with unconventional storytelling means, but that's just a classic. That one will never get old.
I really think that there is something to that. I think that, if you're gonna wanna, if you look at a method to tell the story and you pick, I want to do stop motion, you're you're already going to be in a very different kind of mindset. So that's why the stories that end up being made with this technique are very different kind of stories, and they're they're still like classic narratives, but yeah, it's like ParaNorman is like a throwback, a kids movie throwback to like a 50s like horror, a 50s like pulp horror film, which they strongly reference in the film itself. So yeah, they're just very different kinds of movies, and they're all a little weird, a little askew, but I like that a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and now I'm remembering all of the Tool music videos. Almost all of them are stop motion, usually done by the guitarist who was like a visual artist before he was the lead guitarist of Tool, and he actually like worked on the head for the alien in the Predator movie or something, and he worked on Jurassic Park too, I think.
Huh.
So he's like a professional, or he was a professional, sculptor or animator or something like that. And he makes these stop motion movies that then, become the trippy, weird visuals for the Tool music videos.
Matt, I think this is the first time you brought up Tool on this podcast, which I don't understand how that's possible.
That is weird. Yeah. Just so everyone knows, when the next Tool album comes out, I'm going to be writing a number of however many tracks are on that
You're
album.
You're going to write an article for each track.
How many articles there's going to be. Tool. Yes. Scott is obliquely referencing the fact that anytime you get into my car, anytime in the last 12 years or so, Tool would be in my CD player.
Yep, that's not an exaggeration.
No.
In fact, you might be underselling it a little bit.
Yeah. I love Tool. My wife and I are married because of Tool.
Oh, good. Good to know. Good to know. All right, so I think that's it for LAIKA and stop motion animation. Kubo comes out Friday, and everyone needs to go see it. I want this film to do really well, and I think it's gonna be fine. I mean, it's getting critical acclaim, so I think financially they're gonna make their money. But I don't know. I just want to see more recognition and attention on these guys because they're doing just such good work, and they're telling really good stories. All right, let's move on to what we've been watching. Adrian, why don't you go first and tell us what amazing thing you've been watching?
I had what I guess we could call the Weekend of Pain part 2, because about a month, I'm trying to remember, it was like maybe 2 months ago, I had a long weekend where my fiance was out of town, and I just decided I'm going to go insane and watch the worst movies that I can find. I want to say nicer to myself this time, even though they were horrible. I will let you talk about one of them when we get to that in a minute. But I saw Suicide Squad, and I'll just say that thankfully I saw it for free. But then almost for free, I also saw Nine Lives, the Kevin Spacey movie, because I had a $5 AMC gift card, so it only cost 43 cents, and I still feel robbed of that 43 cents.
Do you mean the movie where Academy Award winner Kevin Spacey plays a talking cat?
And also features Academy Award winner or nominee Christopher Walken, and also stars non-Academy Award winner but CW favorite Robbie Amell. And
I don't even know who that is.
He was Firestorm on The Flash, and he's cousin to what's his face, Stephen Amell from Green Arrow. And then Cheryl Hines is in it, and Jennifer Garner, and all these people are slumming it the entire time. It was not fun. But then both worse and better than these movies, I saw essentially in name mostly ripoff of Kung Fu Panda called The Adventures of Panda Warrior. If you were able to find this movie on Redbox, I say definitely spend a free code. If you look online, you can easily find a free code for rental, or spend a couple dollars and rent it, because you will probably not find a more confusing or weird movie this year. It is poorly animated. It looks like it was made around 1993 or 94, because the CG in the movie is just horrible. The majority of the script makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but you will laugh your ass off the entire time.
Adrian, I don't understand why you do this to yourself.
Because I watch so many movies that there are points that I feel like, you know what, I've watched a whole bunch of good films. I need to throw some bad films in there. And
no, you don't. You don't need to do that.
I always feel I always try to find a moment in all these movies that where something good happens, whether it's a funny line, way something shot, an idea. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but I feel like it builds my film lexicon a little bit more. As painful as it might be at times, it's one of those that you're able to find something that you can hold on to, or you can be like, you know what, this kid actor in this horrible film is actually pretty good, and then 5-10 years later, that performer has become like the next big thing, and you're like, oh crap, I saw this person in this movie, and I knew they were great then. So
okay, that's a really good answer, actually. That's fair. I'm a big proponent of the never hate a movie theory. I strongly dislike some movies, but yeah, I mean, I think if you search hard enough, you can find some redeeming factor to any film you're watching.
Scott,
what?
I will tell you this: somehow in the course of the next couple months, through through Phantom Zone, we will find a movie you hate. Trust me.
No, I'm not gonna do it. I'll find something good to say. I'm gonna start voting not guilty on everything just to prove my.
Yeah, no movie deserves to be in the Phantom Zone.
All right, Matt. What was your recommendation?
So I recommended
what you've been watching.
Yeah, I've recommended this podcast before, Hardcore History, weeks and weeks and weeks ago. It's a podcast where the guy who runs it will spend upwards of 3 hours, sometimes even more, sometimes like 5 hours, essentially talking through a very specific topic or time period in history, and he does it in an extremely engaging way. It sort of single-handedly made me love history. It's not that I hated history; it was just that it wasn't really my thing. But like, you will just be engrossed. Like, you will have no problem listening to this guy endlessly, because he brings in all of the people who were involved and the different situations and the personalities and sort of the historical context of like how we think we know certain things, which I always find interesting. Like, he'll, especially when he's talking about ancient history, he'll contextualize like, we know this from this author, but we suspect that he was making things more dramatic. But this, this other information over here maybe tells a slightly different story, and it's just really, really fun. So the reason I mention it is that this week he released another episode, and he spends so much time on each episode because there's so many hours, and he puts so much effort into working on them and making sure they're accurate, that they come out really infrequently. So it's always a great treat when a new episode comes out. So just mentioning this because I think the last episode of the King of Kings sequence has been posted, and that's about the Persian Empire, basically, the which was somewhere in the range of like 2,500 years ago up till Alexander the Great put an end to it. So that's a big recommend right there.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought this up, because I think the last time you brought it up, I had never heard of this before. And in that time, I've watched or listened to every single episode because I absolutely fell in love with it. It is truly a great podcast. One of the best I listen to. Just you're absolutely right. The way he tells history, like, I was always interested in history, but the way he tells it just makes it even more fascinating. I think his World War I coverage was probably the best thing he's done, in my opinion, of what I listened to. I was fascinated by it. I loved how he talked about the assassination attempt, and just like how like almost an act of God it was, that things just lined up exactly the way they did. It's really fascinating. Adrian,
Yeah.
you should check this out. Everyone listening should. If you have any interest in history at all, should listen to this.
Yeah.
Now, is it on like, does he have a website where it's set, or is it like based through some podcast network?
Both.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can find it. I think what he does is he actually takes the oldest, like there's only a certain number of them that are freely available at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts the rest sort of behind a paywall, which is fine as far as I'm concerned, because there's still hours and hours available for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Scott, about the World War I stuff, and that was what was interesting about that to me, was that nothing that I've ever encountered before had really hammered home how horrible the trench warfare was. Like, you see it in movies and stuff, but like his descriptions of just the absolute horror of it were really like quite affecting to me.
Yeah, everyone calls it the more boring of the two wars, so it's not like ever focused on as much. Yeah, so it was really great, like getting into the details and hearing about it. I will never think about that war the same way again after listening to that.
Definitely.
Cool. All right, on to me. So I have a couple things I watched this past weekend. The one I want to spend most amount of time on is Suicide Squad, especially considering our podcast last week about DC and how we were trying to stay positive about their extended universe and the movies that are coming out in a few years. Suicide Squad is awful. It is a movie that doesn't work on almost any level. It is structured so terribly. It is edited so horribly. The directing is just it's hard to believe that this movie that anyone thought that they had anything good with this movie. It's it doesn't flow. None of the character arcs make sense. Like, none of it works. The only shining light in this thing is some of the acting performances. And I can't even say they saved the movie, because they don't, but they are the only thing that I could pull out. Will Smith's performance, Margot Robbie's performance, they're pretty good working with the material they have. But this movie, oh my god, they introduce characters 3 times. So the movie opens with an introduction of Deadshot, played by Will Smith, and we meet Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie. And then we jump to a new scene where people are reading files, and we hear about those 2 characters again as people read files about what they did. And then we have some flashback scenes that introduce them again. It's just... Adrian, what did you feel about this movie?
I felt pain. I just kind of like how you were stating that, and you can tell that I'm stuttering right now because it's hard to find exactly the words that to try to wrap your head around it. And there's plenty of people out there who are loving this movie, which baffles me, but that's usually how the general audience is lots of times. But just watching the movie, how things flow and how things are supposed to go together just don't really make sense. Character motivations are off. Will Smith gets by in this movie because he's playing Will Smith. He's not really playing Deadshot. He's playing Will Smith, who's good with guns, basically. And I mean, he's doing that for most of his career, and that's fine, but that's what saves him in this movie. He's not doing anything different but be charming Will Smith, and it works by. And it gets by. Margot Robbie, there's scenes where I like her, and there's scenes where I dislike her because something that bothered me about the film is a nitpick that I have. It's a pet peeve that I have with lots of movies, which is if you continually tell me that a character is really, really smart, you need to show me that the character is smart. If you tell me that this character is strong, is powerful, is manipulative, you have to show that. With Harley, they barely show any of it. They show her definitely fighting at certain points, but they focus on her fighting at certain points, being materialistic at other ones, or being sexually driven in other scenes. They don't really show her manipulating anybody. They don't show her using her wits or being smart. There's lots of times that she's continually saved by other characters, even if she's not directly in any danger. And there's maybe one scene that I can think of where she lets down her guard for 2 seconds when no one else is around, that Margot Robbie's innate acting ability is able to come through. But it just feels like a disservice of lots of the people that are in the movie. And there's moments that are built up that you think are going to have payoff and then don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the ultimate show don't tell movie, because this is a movie that over and over again we're reminded that these are bad guys by the characters saying we're bad guys, but no one really acts that bad. We see Deadshot kill one human in this movie, and it's in a flashback, and the rest of the people he kills are just CG blobs that are mindless slaves to an army of the bad guy, who is one of the worstly defined villains in a film I've ever seen. So yeah, like they don't show us anything. We like the frustrating thing about this movie, and the thing that annoyed me so much, is like every once in a while you get a little hint of a piece of something that they were trying to do that would have been interesting, but then it completely gets thrown away or abandoned. I think there's something like the coolness of this concept is these are villains, and you can go to dark and weird places with them that you can't normally take a superhero, because they're supposed to be heroic and wonderful. So you can make these really just shitty people, and you can make that interesting and tell a story surrounding that. And they just didn't seem like they were interested in doing that at all. They just wanted these people to be heroes, just heroes that happened to be in prison.
I mean, I can give you 3 really fast and non-spoilery examples of how many issues there are with this film. One, there's a scene late in the movie where Killer Croc is swimming through a flooded subway area, and all of a sudden looks like he's being attacked, And it literally took me about 2-3 seconds to figure out that it was bad guys who were attacking him and not the good guys who were also with him, because the way they filmed it makes no sense. And all of a sudden there's blobs that look like people that are wearing the exact same thing that the Navy SEALs are wearing coming towards him that he starts grappling with. And for a moment, I'm like, why is he attacking everybody else? And I'm like, oh no, those blobs are just the bad guys. Second is the fact that there's several times in the movie where I was reminded of the live action 1990s adaptation of Spawn. And that is not the comic book movie that you want to be compared with, basically.
No.
And then the third is that one of your main bad guys that you have in the film looks like they were made to belong in one of the Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser.
It really does.
It that dates it itself. And the fact that this movie cost $130 million to make is nowhere on the screen. And not to mention that the person who probably gives the best performance in this film is Jay Hernandez.
I didn't even like his performance that much. I didn't like Diablo as a character at all. I didn't think he was interesting. At least as presented. I thought there was nuggets of interestingness in him, but I think his character arc in this film is going from a pacifist to a violent person, and that's the opposite of what your character arc should be.
But that highlights everything that's wrong with the movie.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, apparently this cut of the movie was cut together by the trailer company that did the first trailer, because in a classic studio move, the studio said, hey, people really liked this trailer. Let's get the people that did that to cut the film, because cutting a trailer and cutting a movie are the same thing, and you use the same techniques. It's ridiculous.
That sounds like a joke, but it's actually true. That's unbelievable to me. Yeah.
It's this movie. Oh my god.
To give you the feel of what it's like to have a movie cut together by somebody that does a trailer. I made this comment elsewhere, but it stands true. If there is a moment in the film where someone is not talking, audibly breathing, and there's not like special effects sounds going on, then they find an excuse to put in another song. Not a piece of music like an instrumental piece, but an actual fucking needle drop of a song.
Yeah, and it's some of the most like blatant and obvious needle drops like ever. Like, it's like Amanda Waller walks out of a limo and they're playing Sympathy for the Devil. And it's like, hey, I wonder if she's a good guy or not. And it's like, I don't know, it's just like, you can tell they were going for like the Guardians of the Galaxy type feel with the music. They wanted like pop kind of older music to go along with the film. But that worked in Guardians of the Galaxy because it was specifically set up in the world.
Yeah.
It's our main character, Star-Lord, had a mixtape with all these old 70s songs on it, and he loved to listen to it. And that's how it worked into the movie. And there's no setup for that here. It's just randomly throwing music at the screen. They play that Bohemian Rhapsody song in the movie literally because it was in a trailer that people liked. So they're like, yeah, throw it in the movie. It doesn't make any sense in context. It's meaningless. It's stupid. This is a bad movie.
This is Guardians of the Galaxy for the Hot Topic crowd.
Yeah, and I tweeted about this, and I said, like, it seems like it's like corporately designed edginess. Like, it's trying to be edgy, but like from a very like McDonald's way.
It does really seem like they're trying to simultaneously copy Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, those movies have actually very different tones. Like you might be tempted to be like, oh, they're both violent while being lighthearted and funny, and it's like, no, that's not really. That's a very simplistic analysis of why those movies work really well. Like, both of those movies have heart first and foremost, and then that's all wrapped up with humor packaging. But
right.
It sounds like Suicide Squad never at any point had heart, so it was stillborn.
And their overarching premise doesn't make any sense. The overarching premise is Superman is dead, and there might be another metahuman that appears that we won't be able to stop. So we need to assemble this team of metahumans in order to stop him. Except there's only one actual metahuman on the team. The rest of them is Harley Quinn, who just has a revolver and a baseball bat. Like, why is she any better at fighting anything than a trained government person? Like, it just doesn't... The concept by itself just doesn't make any sense in the context of the film. It's so bad. It's so bad. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Don't. It's terrible. The other film I saw was Bad Moms. This was just kind of a spur of the moment. We were eating breakfast, and then we're like, "Oh, there's a show that's about to start at the theater. Let's go see this." And I actually quite enjoyed this film. I walked out of the movie, and I said to my fiance, I was like, I wish they had characterized the male characters a little more. And then I realized in a moment what I had just said. And I was like, oh my God, I just realized how terrible what I had said, because they were doing that very intentionally. Like, it was a subversion of a lot of the typical genre tropes, and that the male characters is either there was very much the Madonna and the whore, except in men this time around.
Yeah.
And that was very intentionally done in the film, and it was done very well. And my stupid brain didn't catch up on it until I was walking out of the theater, and I said that and wanted to punch myself in the face. But it's okay. I mean, it's funny in some parts, a little over the top in others, but
yes.
There's this trend amongst movies lately, just showing adults drinking and partying a lot, 30 old and older people. Like that Sisters movie last year did it. There's that movie coming out this winter, Office Christmas Party.
Mm-hmm.
There's this trend that we really love seeing, old people get wasted and party. And I wonder if that's a reflection on our culture and that we feel trapped and we can't have fun or something. But
Scott, I was going to jump in for a second and say that what you mentioned about how you would have liked the male characters to be fleshed out a little bit more in Bad Moms,
mm-hmm.
with the double feature that you had this weekend, you technically did get that, because, of course, who is that person that's not really getting fleshed out in Bad Moms but Jay Hernandez?
That's so true. I didn't even think about that. Because they look so different in the two different films.
If you want to think about it in a really, really weird, messed up way, technically you could think of some weird world where the El Diablo character in a few months maybe gets released from the prison or escapes and goes on to be that character in Bad Moms.
He does say he's a widower.
Because he's a widower.
This changes my whole opinion on both of these films. I love them both now. Suicide Squad, favorite movie of the year.
Yeah. Two puzzle pieces fit together perfectly.
All right, that's all I had this week. Matt, I think we're supposed to be doing a Kryptonian collection next week.
Yep. But
we don't have a person yet. And I texted you today and you ignored me.
Oh, and I texted my brother and I assumed that you knew that.
Well,
I assumed you saw me doing that.
I don't have the ability to observe your text messages from 2,000 miles away.
No one does. It's really frustrating.
Okay, well, so we'll probably do that next week then. We will announce the film on our Twitter as soon as we know what film that is, to give people time to watch it on their own. But I think that's going to be you, me, and Chad, I think, right? Because he won. I guess I should tell Chad.
Yeah.
I'm writing. I'm taking down notes.
We can work him in.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kryptonian collection, something contest, drama, voting, arguing, fighting. Bitter. Someone will leave the council. Maybe.
You're really doing a good job at making this exciting. I want we're too nice to each other. We need to start being jerks. Should be like, Matt, no, you're wrong and you're an idiot.
Yeah. We need to put money into it. Where you have to forfeit money if you get kicked off the council, so you're really incentivized. Change everybody's mind.
I like it. It. So if you want to donate money for us to do that, go to patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms.
There you go. That's our segue right there.
That's perfect. Yeah. Adrian, where can you be found on the internet?
I can be found here and there. I'm on Twitter. You'll put my difficult to remember handle in the show notes.
Pseudo Pig Latin.
Yes, essentially, basically.
Great.
And you can find me in the deepest, darkest dungeons of the film world, trying to decide what I'm going to unleash upon us next time for Phantom Zone.
Which will, I think, be coming the week after Kryptonian Collection, right?
Yeah, so I still have time to try to find something.
Yeah. Matt, how about you?
I'm on Twitter at @MoreDinAmail, and I've been trying to filter my tweets less, so they're a lot less funny these days.
That's really disappointing.
That's exactly how you grow an audience.
Yeah. I looked on Twitter today and I saw that the main Twitter for L. Ron Hubbard's Battlefield Earth had 3,000 followers, and I decided that I can't feel like a successful human being until I have more followers than L. Ron Hubbard's Battlefield Earth. So that's my mission now. So everyone needs to add me on Twitter to help me beat out Battlefield Earth.
I'm sure you can find 3,000 bots who can follow you automatically.
No, I want them to be real people, man. This is important. Battlefield Earth sucks. And I'm not even talking about the movie. The book sucks. Anyway.
So what Scott's saying is, tell him what your Patreon is. He'll give you $5, and then you can follow him.
That's not necessarily what I'm saying. But I'm not saying that.
Yeah. He's not ruling it out, so
you can find me on Twitter at Daly, Scott Daly 85. That's DALY. Our website Twitter is at Daily Planet Films. Follow that for announcements on what movies we're going to be covering in the podcast and all of our new articles that I'm going to write one day, I promise. That will be on dailyplanetfilms.com. And I think that's it. I don't have anything else to say. Adrian, thank you for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we will be talking to you in a couple weeks on the Phantom Zone. But next week, Kryptonian Collection. Is another film going to get into the collection, or are we going to say no for the first time ever? Find out next week.
The podcast is over. It's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school. Maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away.